founders are 11 times more likely to be on the bipolar spectrum.
Didn't know that. Wow.
That is insane. And so when you think about that, how many founders are out there undiagnosed, either suffering with depression, anxiety, or hypermanic, going, I'm fucking taking over the world here, and I am literally going to build a behemoth, to then feel like death because the roller coasters come down and they're in depression. We've got to talk about that, and we've got to be cognizant of that.
I'm Hattie Willis, your host, and each episode I talk to an entrepreneur, investor, or startup expert to unpack their hardest moments, biggest wins, and hard-earned advice so we can shortcut our learnings as founders together. Today I'm joined by James Roycroft-Davis. James is a serial founder, angel investor, and host of the UK's #1 founder and investor mental health podcast, Vulnerable. He's previously started businesses around weight loss and dog training, but hadn't yet found his purpose and the business he wanted to build for the next 10 years. Until in March 2023, he was diagnosed with type 2 bipolar affective disorder. When he started sharing about his diagnosis on his social media, he was flooded with messages saying, "There's no support for me or my support networks." It's what led him to co-found Baseline, as he put it, the first company building technology, content, and community in the bipolar space, to help people on the bipolar spectrum and their support networks to live better. In this episode, we dive into why first-time founders need to stop giving investors godlike status, the shocking correlation between founders and the bipolar spectrum, how getting his diagnosis led to Baseline, building your first product on a shoestring with AI, the importance of building for mental health sustainably as a founder, the need for founders to nail content creation and personal branding, and so much more. I hope you enjoy. Welcome to the show, James. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Tell us, how did you get into entrepreneurship? Were you one of these people who was like, I was always going to be a founder? No. So tell us, how did you get into it?
Got into being a founder totally randomly. In fact, it was a fuck you after I got made redundant.
Okay, tell us. So you got made redundant from what?
Yeah, from a startup. And I was like, what else am I going to do? I really like startups. Okay, well, I'll start with my mum. Don't do that.
Yeah, I was going to say, good idea, bad idea?
No, look, I love my mum. That company's still going, and it's a great company. It's doing 3 million ARR this year.
Okay. But
it came to the point where, that just, it wasn't going to work. And I was like,
You needed out.
I needed out.
So tell us a bit about that company. Tell us what sparked the idea for it, you did.
She was already building it. It was a weight loss tech company. And the idea was that I productized my mum. She's a cognitive hypnotherapist.
Okay.
And the idea, which is proven as well, because we went through clinical trials, is that product focus on why you eat or overeat and on what you eat.
Mm-hmm.
Now that is quite critical, because a lot of people eat because they have an addiction and they don't know it. And they also eat because they binge eat because they have emotional trauma, etc. And it becomes a real issue for them in their life. And then you look at something like sugar addiction. It makes people overeat all around the world. And that's what we tackled. We were taking the opposite approach to Weight Watchers and balloons and the slimming worlds. So I think it's probably north of 50,000 users now.
Okay.
And a lot of them now are recurring. So it's a great little business. It's a proper lifestyle business. I didn't want that. I wanted to go raise money.
Tell us, why did you want to raise money?
Because I was stupid and naive.
Okay.
And I didn't know what the fuck I was doing.
Love that.
Seriously, I literally had no idea. I spent months trying to perfect a pitch deck. I wrote about this on LinkedIn the other day, how founders think that if they switch up a graphic on slide 9 of their pitch deck,
that's the key.
Another 30K is going to drop into their account for an angel investor. It really doesn't work like that. But I thought it did. And I had no idea.
I guess I want to come back to this because I think you've seen a lot of founders now. You're an angel as well. And I think one of my big missions in life is to help founders work out if they do or don't want to raise.
Yeah.
It's interesting. You've been through this journey of starting this company that sounds like it was to a degree your mum's passion, but also
Correct.
Could grow to a size that was exciting to her, but not for you.
Yep.
You then...
God, I wish I had you when I was 6 years ago, when I was fumbling on my way around.
This is why we do it for the founders who need to hear founders like you tell their stories.
Amazing. You just nailed my issue in one sentence.
And I want to come back to that when we talk about baseline, because I feel like you've really changed your why and the way you go about things.
Yeah.
But I think if we're honest as founders, and I think so much of it is that, and this is me kind of psychoanalyzing all founders, but I think you suddenly start your own thing. You don't have anyone else to validate you at a senior level where before you might have done. And investors are suddenly this senior level to say, you're doing a good job, you're building something that's worthwhile. They can say, pat on the back, you're amazing, and you get the TechCrunch article. Do you think I've psychoanalyzed? You think I've missed something? Do you think I've got it right, wrong?
No, I think early founders wank over investors too much.
Okay. What does that mean to you?
That to me means that we idolize them. They've got money. They're like God.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, we forget to think differently about the problem.
Mm-mm.
And there is lots of ways to raise money at an early stage. As a first-time founder, you have to overcome probably the biggest hurdle that any first-time founder or any founder has to overcome, which is you have zero credibility. You have zero track record in building.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is a fucking massive punt for an angel or even a VC, unless you've come from, I don't know, Google, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Or Fang, right? It's a huge punt. And as a founder, you've got to stop like getting upset over that and actually appreciate it.
Mm.
And so your path potentially is slightly different. If you have a really strong background from Fang or, I don't know, you've worked in a really strong startup before, the likelihood is that you could go into like Entrepreneur First, Founders Factory, one of these accelerators or incubators where they take on people who've never built a business before, but see that they're smart, have come from an interesting startup background. And that's a really good route for you. But otherwise, it's hard. And you've got to think of very different ways to raise money. And you've got to think of very different ways to build your business, because you don't have the credibility or the track record before. And you don't know what you don't know. And that's a very long-winded way of saying my number one mistake when I was starting was I looked at VCs as these godlike figures in industry. To an extent, I also looked at angel investors as these godlike figures in industry. And when I went to speak to them, that came across.
Mm.
I would tailor my business to them. They would be like, not sure the market's big enough. And then I go, well, actually, the market could be big enough if I did this. And they're like, and so you're just going round and round in circles.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a real problem.
But I think also for me, it comes back to maybe more first principles. Like if you think about, yes, you can join Entrepreneur First, Founders Factory. I have a mixed love-hate relationship with some of these things. I think they can be a great opportunity. I think they can be a bit extractive from the founder. But I think it kind of comes back to your point as well of, well, why are you doing it? If you want to be able to build a VC backable unicorn business, then yes, you're right, you're going to need capital. And that means you need some sort of way to get credibility fast or hijack it through some way of like advisors, network, something that is going to make you
correct. Do you know Marcus Exel?
Marcus Exel is one of our very early advisors at If We Raise. He's been helping us for years. He's an angel advisor now, helping our startups as well.
Fantastic.
We love Marcus. Shout out to Marcus.
I know. Marcus is one of my really great friends. I went for a walk with him when I was talking about baseline, and he'll be happy with me saying this. And I said, what do you think we should do? I was like, I think we're going to go out and raise big money. He was like, are you sure? Are you sure you're ready to put rocket fuel in the go-kart?
He often talks as well about lawnmower.
Yeah.
Put it in the lawnmower and it's like blows it up.
Exactly. And I'm like, my first reaction is you're nuts.
Yeah.
Always to him. And I say this to him a lot, but he's invariably always right. He's seen a lot. And it is true for founders when they're trying to raise. Are you ready to get on that horse? Because it is a hell of a big horse.
Secondary question to that, I think sometimes we say, are you ready? Like it's the only way. And to your earlier point, actually, like you can build a 3 million annual recurring revenue business. Like to me, that might not be right for you as an individual, but that's a success, right?
Yeah.
And I think we don't tell founders that enough. Like, you can actually choose. And I think lots of founders go into it thinking, great, I'm going to be the maker of my own destiny. I'm going to be my own boss. And then they quite quickly go onto the path of, I must raise. That's the only way. And actually don't stop and choose. What do you want?
Exactly. And it's what does the business need?
Mm.
Because you have to marry up the two.
100%.
And we've discussed this heavily at Baseline, but heavily to death. I wanted to move sustainably.
Yeah.
Because I think 2 co-founders with bipolar and one who's heavily neurodivergent but with chronic depression, we need to be sustainable. Can we do
And you
that?
mean that in a financial sustainability of growth as opposed to a climate sustainability, right?
I mean that as a personal health sustainability. And I've always gone, okay, can we do it sustainably through venture? That is a big question. Can you? And I think there's a possible way to do it with the right investors.
Yeah.
But that takes a lot of narrowing down. Now, Baseline's very lucky. We've got 2 founders who've raised before, one who's just raised heavily on angel, one who's raised big on VC. So we've got a very interesting blend. We're very lucky. We have a nice book of investors that we can start to narrow down. But the question still remains, like, how do you marry the two together? What type of business do you want to build? And what is going to be best for the business? And the friction, I think, is when you don't think about those and you just go forward and one of those 2 pillars or go-karts, as it were, starts to falter or starts to veer off. You have to be driving in the same direction and have that acceptance that this is the route forward. And I come back to Marcus because I've been discussing Baseline now with Marcus for a few months. And I went to film with him for something we're filming at the moment the other week. And he said, what does the business need? Because if you're going to raise a small amount, like I was going to start, we're going to start by raising 250K. But actually, that doesn't get us far with what we need to do. And he's like, okay, so if that's the case, and you need 24 months runway, really, at this stage, I'd be lean, but with 24 months, you need a lot more. Are you ready? And are you okay with that? And it's been a process of acceptance and questioning because I've burnt out before with startups and it's been killer. And am I ready for this? Am I ready to put myself through that? TBC on the answer.
But I love that you're asking the question, right? And I think what strikes me is I genuinely think we all need a Marcus in our lives anyway, but not everyone can have a Marcus because he's one man. But I think that advisor who asks you not just the kind of...
We could put him in AI.
I would invest in AI Marcus.
Me too.
I mean, maybe we should.
Me too. That's a hell of an AI companion.
Yeah. I mean, people would... Maybe let's stop the podcast and just go make that.
That's a really good idea. There's quite a lot of content we could train a model on, actually.
Don't tell him, just steal his IP.
Yeah. Anyway, you were saying.
But so what I'm really curious is you've both had these external advisors helping you question, but you've obviously also done a lot of self-reflection. Like, that's very clear. And I love how you're building Baseline. And I think you're being very candid about at every turn, I didn't do this the first time. I did it differently. So can we run through what were on your previous startups, some of the big, oh shit moments, the really like hard won lessons that actually you don't want other founders to have to touch the fire and be like, it's hot. You can tell them, maybe don't touch that fire.
Building startups is not the be all and end all of your life. That is what happened to me. I lost sight of a lot of other things because I was obsessed. I'm an obsessive anyway. You have to be obsessed as a founder, but also you've really, really got to look after yourself. And that has been the number one learning for me, which is there are going to be other founders who don't need to look after themselves or they hide it incredibly well. But I am not that person. Most people aren't. They really, really, really feel it. And we have to be very honest and open with ourselves and look after ourselves and get really strong routines around your wellness and your health, because you have to treat yourself as an athlete when building a business, because it is a 5 to 10 year slog.
Mm.
You're running this insanely topsy-turvy marathon with like roller coasters every single day. Like, no wonder it's triggered bipolar for me.
Mm.
I mean, founders are 11 times more likely to be on the bipolar spectrum.
Didn't know that. Wow.
That is insane. And so when you think about that, how many founders are out there undiagnosed, either suffering with depression, anxiety, or hypermanic, going, I'm fucking taking over the world here, and I
Yeah.
am literally going to build a behemoth, to then feel like death because the roller coasters come down and they're in depression. We've got to talk about that, and we've got to be cognizant of that.
How much of it, I guess, what you just described
Yeah.
is also, as a founder, I can only imagine, like, so hard to separate out, like, what is situational? Like, am I just low because actually we're having a really hard time as a startup, versus is this something in my mental health I need to be paying particular attention to, exploring a diagnosis for? How did getting your diagnosis change how you approached starting? I mean, obviously,
Well,
it's a bit hard to disentangle because baseline is for those who are trying to
I
get
think it's quite
diagnosed.
easy,
Okay.
actually, because my journey with bipolar started 7 years ago, and I had no idea. I got a diagnosis in March this year. I've spent 6 years building companies, either in hypermanic phases where I've built a lot, or in depressive phases where it's all come crashing down and burn. Very little in the middle.
Yeah.
Or I've been hypermanic depression. It's just been wild. And so when I got my diagnosis, everything made sense. I think it's very easy now for me to look at this and go, okay, this makes a lot of sense, but how do we change it? And for me, bipolar is something I'll have for the rest of my life. The likelihood is it would potentially shorten my life by 10 to 12 years. And I have to be incredibly on the money with sleep, diet, exercise, medication, and my relationships, because otherwise it's very tricky. And so for me to now separate bipolar, which I'm a sufferer, with building a company for people with bipolar and their families or inner circles is quite easy, because I'm like, number one, I've got great founder market fit. Like, that's true.
Deep empathy.
Yeah, like, I've got founder market fit. I talk about my bipolar, which is rare. I create content on that journey, and I want to destigmatize bipolar. And actually, I want to destigmatize mental illness, because how cool would it be for me, or let's say somebody walked in with schizophrenia, right? And sat down and they said to you, hey, Hattie, I've got schizophrenia. And you were like, cool. Right now, you would go, fuck, do I need to be worried? Like, are you going to jump out that window? Like, do you know who you am right now? Like, that is the immediate reaction. And it's the same with bipolar. When people go, when I say, like, I got bipolar, I say it in the most nonchalant way, because to me, that is the only way we're going to normalize it. People go, I'm so sorry. Like, are you okay? Like, I'm like, my mental health is really good, but I have a mental illness. There's a distinction there. And that's where we want to get with baseline.
And picking up on that, I think we've all grown up with these throwaway comments of, oh, he's bipolar, she's bipolar.
Yeah.
So much internalized, as you say, like, assumption that it means a certain thing.
Yeah.
What were some of the things, and you obviously cannot overstate enough anyone who wanting to learn more about this, wanting to educate themselves, like, definitely follow James, because there's so much content on this.
Yeah.
But what are some of the things that you wish, when you were a founder, undiagnosed, someone had helped you correct, that you had built maybe a sense of what it meant that might have helped you realize, hey, I have it, and actually that doesn't mean I'm what I thought it would have meant?
See, I'm not sure I can answer that question. But what I can do is tell a story about the moment I thought that there was something genuinely wrong, that I needed help. And funny enough, so I just had a psychotic episode at New Year last year. Sat at the dinner table in a hotel in Devon with 20 of my friends. I was hearing voices and bawling my eyes out. trying to hug my best mate. And he was like, what the fuck is going on? We had no idea. 2 days later, we're leaving that hotel. And I say to my wife, call up Janos Barbaros. I want to go to Austria. Now, Janos is the CEO of Founders Taboo, and Founders Taboo are a founder mental health company that I'm a shareholder in. Janos is Austrian. He's got a fantastic house in the Austrian mountains. And in hindsight, this was me being very impulsive, which can be a element of the condition. But it was the right impulse to take actually at the time. So I booked myself on a flight. I went to Austria. I spent 4 days there. On day 2, Janos has this massive whiteboard in his front room. And we're talking about my life, and I was saying what was wrong. And he said, document on this board all the events that have happened in the last 5 years that have made you feel high and low, and all of that in chronological order. So I did. Spent about 15 minutes doing that. He came back in the room and he said, now draw a line to join them up. And I could see on this massive whiteboard, I'm visualizing it now, my life over the last 5 years looked like this. And I looked at that and I stepped back and I burst into tears and I was like, oh my God. I was diagnosed with depression 3.5 years ago, taking antidepressants. All that was now we know now, what we know now is all that was doing, because it was a misdiagnosis, which is part of the problem in bipolar. Because GPs just aren't equipped to diagnose bipolar. You have to go to see a psychiatrist, and it takes 11 months to do that, to go and see one. But SSRIs, antidepressants, make you go higher and higher. And then the lows are lower and lower. And so I just burst into tears. I saw this board. And I saw my life through literally being a founder, all the highs and lows, but how that emotionally made me feel. And I came home and I was like, this isn't depression. So I went to see a psychiatrist, and obviously within half an hour, he was like, you've got type 2 bipolar affective disorder. I wasn't able to know that, which is why I can't answer your question. Because all I was experiencing was these deep highs, or these very highs, and these deep lows, which actually is part of the founder experience.
Yeah.
But for me, they were pushing me into really high moments, higher than they normally should, and down lower than they normally should. And I wasn't able to interpret why or get a handle on that. And that was the most difficult part of it.
We talked about getting your diagnosis being transformational for you.
Yes.
At what point do you decide this is now the mission I want to go on to help others with as my next venture?
The answer was I didn't. To start with, I didn't have that much interest in it. I was looking at this massive days for a couple of months. I also got married and moved house and all this kind of stuff. And I started thinking about what I was going to do next. I wanted to start another company. I wasn't really fit. Well, I wasn't really enjoying being in somebody else's company, because I'd helped a mate out with his app, and I was like, I'm a founder of a thing. This is me. And it wasn't until I caught up with a friend of mine, a really good friend of mine called Saki, who is a VC. He's founding partner of his own fund at Ebion. He's the pre-seed and early investor in Calm, etc. Better. And we had a chat. And I was asking him, like, what are you investing in next? Like, what are you looking to invest in? He was like, James, serious mental illness has very little going on, and it's kind of worrying. And he was like, you've got bipolar, I've got type 1 bipolar, like, you should think about this. And then I was like, okay, interesting. That's one box ticked. Is it potentially VC backable if I need it to be?
Coming back to our earlier question.
Yeah, if I need it to be.
Yeah.
Which box tick? Is the market big enough? Well, 1 in 8 people around the world suffer with a mental illness. That's 1 billion people. That's a hell of a large town. Can I convince people that this is a big enough problem to work on. Well, fucking obviously. Do I then have founder market fit? Well, yes, I'm bipolar. I need a team. Okay, I will, because I'm not a solo founder. Okay, I know somebody, Matteo, who has bipolar and is an amazing entrepreneur. Fine, call up Matteo. What do you think? Fucking hell, dude! I didn't even realize this was. Wow, yes, we got to do it. Okay, started thinking about it. So my 3 boxes: VC backable, is market big enough to build a business, and do I have found a market fit for this? Am I the right person to build this? I was looking at that going, those 3 boxes are kind of ticks. Okay, let's start thinking about this seriously. That was the moment that I was like, right, what do I need to do? And how do I need to do it? And that came start September. We've only been working on this for 2 months.
So 2 months.
Yeah.
Talk us through where you've got in 2 months, because I genuinely think it's pretty. I think a lot of founders would think you can't get there that fast in 2 months.
2 months, we have launched the brand. We're about to relaunch the brand soon by the time this will go out. We have built the first kind of AI product. It's an AI companion called Sam, although actually we've dropped the Sam name. And it's our way of showing people that you can get knowledge on bipolar anytime, anywhere in WhatsApp by asking a question. And it will give you anything you want, because we went on Upwork and we were like, how cheaply could we build this? And it was Marcus who said to me, build a product on under 200 quid that satisfies a very small hypothesis and come back to me. And I was like, you're fucking nuts. And if he was like, trust me, yeah, just give it a go. So we did. We found an engineer who trained a very small model on bipolar and psychiatry. We've actually got 5 million data points already from that. We launched that. We've had 200 users so far. Really small, but it shows that people having conversations with it, which is the most important thing. We are in really early discussions with King's College London about research study. We're going to formally partner, I hope, soon to be announced, with Bipolar UK, who are the largest and only bipolar charity.
Amazing.
In the UK, to give access to the community. There's 1.4 million people in the UK who've got bipolar.
Wow.
It's about 7 million people affected with bipolar, if you count the inner circle. Give access to that community, to education, knowledge, courses, webinars, access to psychiatrists, AI companion, which gives us data
to work out what else they need.
Build a data company out of bipolar so that we can start predicting episodes. We can help psychiatrists make more informed decisions on misdiagnosis with patients, and to help friends and family understand how to manage the sufferer better through AI. And that's been 2 months. We got a team. We've got a team of officially 4, but unofficially 5. We've put our own cash into this. We will have the first app coming out in 30 days.
Amazing. And so I guess I'm also really curious. So you do it super lean. Love Marcus's challenge to do it on 200 pounds. I think most founders would be terrified of that.
Yeah.
Was that a challenge for you in terms of stepping back from, you've obviously got this big vision. And I think I often see this with impact startups, particularly where they're so tied to we want to create this value, that sometimes it gets really tricky to do that really minimum version because you want to deliver so much impact to your customers.
I think that's just the skill. And I'm not saying I'm the most skilled. We are lucky that there are very few people building a mental illness company around the world. And actually what we want to do is build the first consumer mental illness company. So all of our branding, everything, our content is going to be super raw, authentic, and consumer focused, so that actually 1 billion people around the world don't have to suffer in silence and actually feel like they can be, there is a company out there, a brand out there they can hang on to they can see as something that's going to help destigmatize what they have. To zoom out of that, yeah, we've got the mission and the vision, but like, you have to really look at what are the hypotheses at each stage. And we're like pre-seed really. And yeah, we want to solve this big problem. Like, seriously, what are we trying to prove to either get to the next round or to get to the next revenue milestone? That is literally all that it comes down to.
I love that. I think so many founders forget that.
Yeah. And because when you're caught up in big vision and funding and how can we make this the most sexy? How can we tell the story so investors fall off our feet? Right. You've got to do this really small things well. You've got to find users and actually gather feedback and how many users does it take to get to that position? For us, I don't think to raise a good pre-seed in AI now, you need that much. That's the scary thing. But also it means that founders are going, well, okay, well, I'll stick AI into every single product. And the mistake that's going to happen is that, or the mistake that I think is happening is that the user case for AI is going to need to be bigger and stronger. And you're going to need to be impacting more people or businesses.
And it also depends what you're doing with AI, right? Like if you're dependent on someone else's tool and you're just plugging it in and...
Yeah, exactly. Are you building
Who
anything
owns it?
proprietary? Who owns it? And do you have the IP?
Yeah.
That's really hard because there's so much AI going out at the moment.
And to your point, you're mentioning data, right? Like
Yeah.
what you need to build great AI is that data.
Yeah.
And so how do you build that data first approach?
Yeah. So if you work backwards from, right, we want to have impact and then we're going to use AI to do that. And what approach we can take? Well, fine, we need loads of data. What do you then need? The company harvests the data, but you need people to feed the data.
Yeah.
And that means you need something that people want to use. Not like, we'll just build AI and hope it sticks.
And I want to come back to something you said earlier, because I know that you're an investor in a content creation company. And obviously content creation is a big way that you're both attracting customers, but also it's such a beautiful, you can deliver value, not just through the AI tool, but also the education you're delivering through the content, right? So very symbiotic. Talk to me about how you see the need for content creation around founders, because it's something that we're talking about a lot. And
oh, God, don't get me started. So, investor in something called the Journey.vc. Right? The theory, and I think is a fucking good one, is that in venture, whether that's in venture studios, accelerators, incubators, or funds, at a certain level, so between 10 to about 100 million in AUM, assets under management, they're really shit at marketing themselves.
yeah,
And venture's becoming more competitive. So where can they differentiate and add more value for the fund, but also their founders that are in the fund or in the portfolio, which then allows them to raise more from more LPs?
Yeah.
Theory. We think that on the venture side, you could do that through video and through documenting the build in public journey of how you are in venture and why, and what your portfolios are like. What is it really like to be in venture as a brand marketing strategy? I think this works the best in the incubator, accelerator, or studio model, to be honest with you, because you've got cohorts of founders that you're impacting, they're going through these advisory sessions, they're raising money at demo day, and you can follow those individual companies and make this incredible docuseries, each cohort, about how you're breeding great founders into great companies.
And from a founder angle,
Yeah.
I think this is increasingly a topic, right?
Yeah.
I'm
the worst for this, by the way. So
when you say the worst for it,
I'm the worst for it, right? So I get annoyed by LinkedIn.
tell me,
Okay, so
when have I pissed you off with the
I think personal branding is one of the most important parts of being an early stage founder, because it gives you authority. And it can be your early access to investors and customers. And it's also the lowest cost. Like, so you don't need to like spend on marketing, you spend on yourself. So if it all goes tits up, then at least you have a personal brand to fall back on and find yourself a job.
And or like go again, right?
Yeah,
This
or
like
go
keep telling founders like the company might die, you get to keep the brand you build.
Exactly.
My last company didn't love me thinking that, but it's definitely true.
It's moved that way, right? So I think that we are getting to this place where everybody's doing LinkedIn now. Most people are doing it badly, me included. And you have to post 3 to 5 times a week with like lots of education and lots of basically fluff, and all the posts are wanky. I'm the worst for it. And post a nice selfie of yourself. And that's how you brand. I think there is something different in it, which is, if you look at cool founders building great companies, I look at Stephen Bartlett as like the most accurate example of how you could do it differently. The way he has documented his journey through vlogging each month. And I think founders should be doing that. I just don't think they know how to, and they don't have the direction to. And the vision here is that actually, if we can make it affordable for founders each month to be able to document their journey in a way which makes them seem elite, that is the key thing here. Founders need to be portrayed as elite, because if they can be elite, easy to raise money, find customers, boost their own personal brand.
Really curious though. So something I've observed, and I was chatting to someone about this recently, and you may fundamentally disagree, is that for a lot of founder brands where that's very tied to sales, right? Like, I'm building a company around myself. What I've observed, and actually, interestingly, I'm realizing as I'm saying this, I've particularly observed this for female founders, and I don't know if it's a gender thing, is that being super vulnerable about what you're finding hard, what you're struggling with, is something that audiences love.
Yes.
And so, like, how do you, like, do you think, where does the balance come in between, like, I've got to be elite and I've got to be authentic and vulnerable?
But I think elite is being authentic and raw. And I think it comes into play. It is not like, oh, look at me, look how big my dick is. Like, no, it is not like that. It is about documenting and showcasing the journey, because people want to watch that.
Yeah.
People want to watch the ups and downs. Like, we're doing it with Baseline right now. People will see the raw James, Mateo, etc., because not only is it good content, it's good for our business, because we are trying to destigmatize mental illness, starting with bipolar, but it's also good for our fundraising. The theory is that anyway, but also for people to connect with us as human beings. That's where brands are built.
Which leads me on to final bit I wanted to pick your brains on before we have to stop. We're running out of time. It's just like a couple of notes on your experience as an angel investor. And we were talking actually before about, like, it is so down to the individual and what you think of them. So 2 things, like, what would you tell founders thinking about raising angel for the first time that they should know that they maybe don't know? And then the second thing is, what is the most common bit of advice you find yourself giving founders as an angel?
So question number 1, the answer to that is, from my perspective, as angel investors, we're looking for a return. I'm not just looking to piss my money out the wall. Like, it's just not. It's part of my pension, to be honest with you. Like, seriously, that's how I look at it. So I'm looking for between a 5 and 100x return, if I can get that. That means you coming to me with your business, I need to see a big enough market, and you need to demonstrate that, and I need to buy into that. And then I need to see how that's going to make money. I think founders, if you can think like an angel investor with your deck, with your business plan, with how you're pitching it, with what your plans are, and you can then demonstrate that, you're going to be much more successful, because it makes you look smarter. And equally, I then don't have questions going, can you really build this? And that really is what I would say founders should do. Build your pitch like an angel investor. In fact, I would actually build your pitch regardless of whether you're going for VC, as if you're pitching to venture, in the knowledge that they want to find a unicorn.
Yeah.
Because then what you'll do building your pitch is you'll realize potentially that this isn't a $1 billion company.
Yeah.
Then I need to tailor my strategy again. How big can this really get?
And I think there are some angels who don't need you to be venture backable.
No, not
and there
at all.
are some paths to exit faster that you as an angel, you can get a massive return by not being diluted.
Yeah.
But to your point, know the angel. And if that's their
I don't need that.
investment business,
I'm not like, this needs to be venture backable.
But
Like,
then you need a different strategy.
yeah, but like I want a 10x return.
Mm.
Some angels want a 3x return, but that's what I want, because that's, as a founder, that's the game that we play. And so just got to think like that. And it's not, it doesn't come naturally to a lot of people. It didn't come naturally to me.
Mm.
And now I've soaked myself in this industry and now I'm like a totally damp squid. But
We're all pruny over here.
I'm so pruny. Yeah. But now I've got into angel investing as well.
And what's the most common piece of advice you find yourself giving founders?
Look after yourself. That's just it. Because that is what I would want. It's what Marcus always tells me.
I was going to say, he's the best one for saying.
Yeah, look after yourself.
Final 2 questions I ask every guest we have. First thing, what are you proudest of as a founder?
I'm proudest of every single day from now on. I can look back and look at where 23-year-old James was and go, win, lose or draw, you have actually become a better founder. And that I'm really proud of, because for so much of my life, I never felt good enough as a human being for various reasons. And now through immense work on myself, I am starting to feel good enough and impacting people and speaking about what I believe in. And so every single day I can look at myself and go, you can be proud, because actually where you were is complete sea change from where you are now. And that's really cool.
Love that. Finally, and it may be the same as the piece of advice you give all the founders you invest in, but what is the best piece of advice you've ever been given as a founder?
Growth comes from being comfortable in the uncomfortable. Nice.
I like that a lot.
And when I look at my life and when I look at shit again, like, I don't like fundraising. In fact, I hate it. Like, I'm happy to say on the podcast, we're about to start fundraising and I'm absolutely terrified. And if that disqualifies me from venture, like, I'll find more money from somewhere. But I know that I think all past fundraising experiences are traumatic. And there's some trauma in my experience where it really gets my heart racing when I think of what we've got to do, because it's really tough. And my network is 10 times bigger than it was 2 years ago. That's the scary thing. Yeah, I'm still like, this really is uncomfortable. But to move on with that hurdle, the obstacle is the way. You've got to get comfortable. The obstacle is the way. You've got to get comfortable in the uncomfortable for you to actually go, we're going to move on. And I think that really is the best piece of advice I've ever been given.
I love that. It reminds me, because I'm a child at heart, of there's a children's book called Going on a Bear Hunt.
Yeah.
And there's a phrase in it that my family have used a lot over the years, which is can't go over it, can't go under it, we'll have to go through it.
Correct.
And I say that to myself many times. But I'm going to add yours into my roster. So, James, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing so much.
Thank you so much for having me. And I hope it's been useful for some founders. And we're all fucking lunatics, really.
What a note to end on. Love it.
Thank you for listening. Before you go, please do take a minute to follow so you never miss another episode. We have some incredible founders coming up. And I always love to hear what resonates with listeners. So do drop us a direct message on Instagram @NotMyFirstGuest with any moments that meant something to you, ideas for future episodes, or your own entrepreneurial stories you want to share. Until next time, happy startupping. One of the most annoying things that can happen to any of us is getting cold outreach that feels like the company hasn't done any research on you at all. So it's no surprise that investors like outreach from founders that feels like they've actually researched them. That's why I was so excited when the founder of ShipShape.vc, Daniel, reached out to me about sponsoring this episode. ShipShape.vc is a search engine that's free for founders to use to find investors who've been sharing content that shows they're interested in startups like you. I've already been talking about ShipShape.vc on panels I've been on and to founders I coach because I genuinely think it could be a massive game changer for startups. There's a link in the show notes to learn more if you're interested.